Hey, welcome to the Cam Otis Show. On this episode, special treat. We've been talking business, business, business. And we decided to have our good friend Angus on. And you know what? We'll probably end up talking business because we always do. But we really wanted to talk a little bit about our favorite sport, rugby. And, you know, Angus, what I want to know, and we're going to do this real time, and not mean the way we record it, but in recent history, the the penalty on Bernard Foley
hmm
in the Bledisloe match on
hmm
the evening. Uh, I mean, what's your opinion? As a world rugby trainer,
Yeah,
coach, and
yeah.
former player, I don't think, well, and amateur referee. We'll throw that in there also. Uh,
Thank you. That's the real one. That's the real badge of honor. Easy, yeah. The referee made the right call. I actually have absolute respect for him having the courage for the call. I actually watched the highlights. I didn't see the whole game. I watched the extended highlight version, and it was fascinating what the media reports versus. I was looking at the front end of the game, and man, this is an awesome game of rugby. And at 20 minutes from the end, they're 30 points to 12 or something down. So they've done well to come back. At that point, he knows better. So if you look at the abbreviated version of the game, I was doing the count. So when the penalty was awarded, and he said, "Clock's off." Right now, the clock is on.
mm,
Right, and that guy stood and did nothing for over 30 seconds. Right, so at 90 seconds left in the game, he uses up 1/3. And I spoke to a few referee buds, and they were saying, yeah, they're listening to the audio. He told him 7 times, you have to kick the ball 7 times. It's not like, right. And in the Aussies whining and like the number 9 banging off at the ref about you cost us the championship. That's total horse banana, man. Right. Bernard Foley, professional player, he's got a kick on him. He knows better. Right. Even though he's tired, he's still got good hamstrings. He could have pounded that
oh,
right down to halfway
yeah,
easily. Okay, it's an All Blacks line out, but you're going up to the line out. Okay, then you've used most of that 90 seconds. Walk
mm,
up to the line out. Okay, and you've just got them down in their half. Yeah, absolute gamesmanship and stupid, a stupid, immature decision. And well done the ref for having the courage to stand up to it.
yeah. Well, and I agree with you. Bernard Foley. I mean, it's not like this was his first international match. Isn't he like in the 50 plus cap category?
Yeah, and the guy's a great player. He's been around in Super Rugby for over a decade.
Yeah.
So this guy, and I'm going, oh, maybe he was too tired because he's getting a bit old. Who knows? But yeah, and he had a great game. At first receiver, pulling that game around
Mm.
is amazing. Yeah, again at the front end, there was like 3 yellow cards in the first quarter, and then the game just got really exciting.
Mm.
Um, and to come back from in a game of rugby, to come back from that beat down against the All Blacks, against anyone, let alone the
Mm.
All Blacks, is a massive endeavor. So I think when the dust settles, they've got to take a look at themselves in the mirror and go, how did we snatch victory or defeat from the jaws of victory?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think about it a lot, as much as that last play is always the one that, sticks in people's mind, whether, you win on the last play or you lose on the last play, there's 79 other minutes of the game. And as much as you want to shake your finger about what happened that last minute, you could have stopped. You could have made that try-saving tackle earlier. You could have played a smarter game and not given up as many penalties. All of those different things. I always say this to my youngest kids with the Engage Foundation, that how many mistakes do you think there are in a single rugby match? And it's a lot, but each one can be that catastrophic mistake. And so as much as you want to look at that and say that's the one, there's also so many mistakes throughout that first, 79 minutes of the game that you put yourself in that situation in the first place. You can get mad at the ref, but I mean, really, when it comes back to it, Rugby is about playing to the ref. And, Angus, to your point, I guess I hadn't seen that he had said it that many times. From the clip I had seen, it definitely looked like he had given him what I would consider a sufficient warning. Seven warnings. That's more than sufficient, in my opinion. But even if there wasn't that much of a warning, that's on you to listen to the ref. If the ref says kick the damn ball, you better kick the damn ball, and you better not try to take that extra 5 seconds, try to milk it a little bit more, because rugby is, won and lost inside of that gray area. And so much of that is being able to play to the ref and to adjust to that in real time. If the ref's telling you to move, you better move. It doesn't matter what you have in your mind before that, you better move the ball.
Well, and the ref's thinking about who's being disadvantaged here, right? So the ref has kind of, if you like, a duty of care to say, well, right, you're now creating a disadvantage through, in this case, passive aggressive action. So the ref kind of has a duty to say, hey, let's get this game going. And, even if you think about it tactically, okay, even if he'd kicked it like 10, 20 seconds, and how much difference does that make in a game? 10, 20 seconds, kicked it earlier, okay, the ref's still going to force the line out. He's not going to allow them to kick it into touch and say no line out. He's still got to force the line. And what does he think he's going to do? Stand there till the clock reaches 80 minutes and he blows the full-time whistle? What a plum. Oh, don't get me, I can feel myself heating up on this. But the referee's got to think about, in the eyes of the law, who's advantaged, who's disadvantaged here, right? And that's what he's got to look at. And he's made his decision. And good luck. The other thing as well is a lot of emotion. Right, this is where rugby people, sometimes smart, sometimes daft. Oh, we hate the TMO, the third match official. We hate that. Get rid of it. Get rid of it. We hate it. Okay, then you've got a professional ref with 2 professional assistant refs. Stop sledging them. Let them make decisions, because you will never get rid of that video backup if you just sledge referees for decisions you don't like.
What would you say? Well, let's put the All Black hat on. I know that's a big reach for you. And
I am inclusive and diverse.
Yeah. You're in the sheds after that, after the final whistle. What are you telling the boys there?
The All Blacks?
Yeah. Because it's too easy to talk the Australian side. We've heard all that.
So if I was looking at the All Blacks, I'd say, number one, well done on the win. But we've got work to do, because we kind of scraped the win on a penalty, and we're not in an ideal situation. And you go back to start of the last quarter, we've got something like a 15, 17 point surplus in our favour. And that gets eroded in the last quarter. Now, if you look historically at All Black performances, they up the ante in the last quarter because teams can't keep up. So we've got to be looking at do a bit of root cause analysis. What's going on? But I'd just say, well done, but it was a scrape. I want you all to reflect on how this was. How did we whittle away that surplus to almost lose the game in the final quarter, which is normally our pièce de résistance in terms of rugby endurance. So I'd be having a look at some of those things, to be honest.
Where do you see? And I had this chat with a friend of ours. I was on his podcast, a Brit that lives in New Zealand. St. John, Craner, right, Kim? That's his last name, Craner. Because he asked me about my opinion of what was going on with the All Blacks, and this is after they just lost that match to Argentina in Christchurch. But what do you see in the larger picture of world rugby? What does that sort of result, both of these matches? I mean, compare the Argentina match and then the Argentina loss and then the Bledisloe win on by the skin on their teeth sort of thing. What does that mean in the world rugby bigger picture?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think there's a couple of things there. So I think the Southern Hemisphere's got to stop whining, right? Which is, I know that's a barbed comment, but bear with me on this.
Right? By the way, that was Angus Peacock.
Yeah, here's his address. No, because they just, so let's be respectful to the fact that Ireland and Argentina have spent a decade investing in how they play, right? Regrouping, rethinking, and how do we get into the top tier of rugby and stay there? Okay, and you have to target beating New Zealand, and they've done it, and well done. And you know what I'd like to see is a bit of respect. People going, man, they've improved. That's the point, is they've improved significantly, and you can't take that away from them. And instead of, so coming back to my original comment, was instead of being, oh, and I've seen some of the diatribe on social media, oh, World Rugby's out to get us, and the referees are out. What a load of nonsense. No one's out to get you. Just respect the fact that those teams have got better, and they have got better. They've got, and I really love the Pumas specifically because they had the courage, however many years ago it was, say, right, we're going to play we're going to find the resources and play in the Rugby Championship, arguably the toughest, one of the two toughest competitions in the world in rugby, and we're going to take a whooping until we get better. And they never complain. They get on with it. And they grow and they grow. And now they've turned New Zealand. So you look at how they played against New Zealand, and that win against New Zealand, it was a kicking tactical game. It was awesome to watch. And equally, round the ruck, contentious area for everyone. They were so clean and disciplined around the contact zone. You could see it. The referee was like, whoever was impinging it was always a black shirt. And they had this amazingly disciplined tactical game built around a kicking strategy, which I loved it. I thought it was so smart, right? And then with the Kiwis, ultimately, everyone knows if you break the Kiwi D, they scramble D very well, but they're not used to defending, right? They're not used to like looking in their own backyard, and that can cause a bit of panic. Right. And it does. You see how they play. So the Irish were great at finding those gaps, getting into the D, and just keep breaking up and messing up their D. And no one can sustain that. You know, so I love the fact that they've kind of broken the myth of All Black invincibility. I think Australia is in a different space. You know, and people don't. I mean, Australia is financially worse off than USA Rugby. It was at a $9 million deficit a couple of years ago. That's some seriously bad management. But I think, you know, I don't know. I've been out to NZ. I haven't been out to Australia enough. But Australia still seems to be very polarized in how it manages rugby at community level. And it's a shrinking group of elitists. That's what the message is coming out. So you and I both know, Otis, from diverse backgrounds, if your gene pool is getting narrower and narrower, that's not a growth mindset. That's a reductive mindset.
Yeah.
And they've got to do something to work it out.
And I think, you know, you said growth mindset there, and that's what I saw so much in the way that the All Blacks managed that loss is and I don't remember if it was Ian Foster, if it was one of the players who said this, but he said, you know, Argentina wasn't playing to win. They were playing to not lose. And these kind of finger pointing things, you know, whether it's the ref, whether it's, oh, they're changing the game, it's disrespectful the way they're hitting the rucks, or whatever excuse they want to come up with. It's what I think it really goes back to is when you're choosing to make that excuse rather than choosing to grow, you're going to set yourself up for failure. You know, a little bit of a callback to the first time we had you on, Angus. You know, we talked sigmoid performance curves, right?
Yeah.
What's happened is the All Blacks are on the downslope, and they haven't done anything to jump to that next curve. You know, whether it's changes in the coaching structure, changes in the strategy, changes in the player pool, whatever it may look like, you know, from the inside, that change needs to come because they're clearly on the decline. Now, they're not on the sharp decline yet. They're, you know, petering off a little bit there, but they need to make that jump if they're going to continue the excellence that they've had. Because historically, you talked about the All Blacks being invincible. The reason they seemed like they were invincible is because they would make those changes before they would drop off. And they've stopped doing that. They've gotten, I mean, I don't think there's any other way to say it besides complacent.
I kind of yes and no on that one. So coming back to Ian Foster, yeah, I in general terms, I think they're generally very calm at responding to media in the moment, in the heat. I remember those guys haven't come down off their plateau, off their emotional spike, and then they suddenly have to answer these questions. So even though they're super well trained, I quite like the fact that the guy's got a bit of emotion, and that probably is genuine what he felt in the moment, and then he's got to zip it up and get back to being a professional Teflon suited entity and quash all his emotions. I kind of like that in soccer. You look at Premiership soccer and they get, yeah, of course I'm emotional. It's a game, you know, and we can't have that in rugby. We can't have the coaches being emotional and showing that they're upset or happy, right? Why not? But I think to your point, the All Blacks have been super creative, particularly in attack. They've been the most creative attacking side for this century. And now we've got new players in the mix. We've got France and Ireland in the mix being very creative in their attacking, which takes, again, it's a change management mindset. It takes courage to build an attack. And it's hard, right? Where I think most of rugby is reductive, to be honest, right? They play like the Springboks or England traditionally do, which is a defensive game. And Wales, man, they're dry as dust. Right? Oh my God, people I know the Welsh love rugby. I love watching Welsh rugby of the 70s and 80s, but it's just since rugby league gone reductive, it's all defensive attrition. And you think that's just like counterculture. And the French have gone, yeah, enough is enough. Let's go back to what we want to be with all this Gallic flair. And who can't love that? So nowadays, the Kiwis are no longer the single innovator in the room in terms of innovative policy. We've got the French out there, the Irish. And yeah, you can argue that the Pumas played a defensive attritional game, but it worked. So that's a form of innovation. So have at it, you know.
Well, that's just real quick, Dad, just to jump in there. You know, it's something that, you know, I find myself saying all the time here at the U of A team whenever we talk defenses, line speed beats everything. Like if you bring line speed and you get in people's faces, doesn't matter which offense is in front of you, if you can get into their face and get that quick launch, you can put a lot of pressure onto them, and that pressure will cause mistakes. And, you know, it's, you know, that defensive mindset, you know, a little bit of an attrition, but it's like, if you can play that, just like you said, Angus, that's just one of the many strategies to the game. You know, just like you can win a kicking game, offensive or defensive, there's all these different ways that you can approach it. And the simplicity, and I know there's a lot of other complicated things that Argentina did, you know, to put together that win, but the simplicity of the defensive launch, and this is something I saw when South Africa beat the All Blacks as well, is the All Blacks were a little bit flat, and the defense just kept coming and getting in their face over and over and over and over again. And it's really hard to play attacking rugby like that, you know? So the simplicity of the defensive launch, I think, is, you know, something that, as much as it's not as creative, I don't think it really matters, because the simple things can win a lot of games.
Right. Yeah. And if I was attacking you, Cam, I'd have a field day picking that apart and showing like what your track record is, and then show my players how to unlock it, which is the whole point of coaching, isn't it? It's like, you know, show your players how. I've just got the same with the guys I'm working with right now. They all play reductive rugby, and it drives me potty, because in the face of a blitz D or a rush D or however you want to call it, they all do the same thing. And I say, right, let's look at this. Let's talk about this in slow-mo. You're rushing into a wall. Yeah. Any other solutions? Any other ideas? Right. All right. What do you mean? Well, the wall is made out of this many bricks, and it's moving forward down this lane. What's on the either side, left or right, that you can exploit? Oh yeah, never thought of that. So
do you think,
and the beauty of it is every action has a counter reaction, every strategy has a counter strategy, and that should be the beauty of it.
Do you think that it was a lack of adjustment then? To take from the All Blacks there to, you know, in the case of let's just say the Pumas defense, that they just weren't making those adjustments? Because it's one of those, kind of to your point, it's very hard to believe that one of the best teams in the world doesn't know that stuff. and that, just the bulk of the leadership, whether it's the coaches or the players, knows what kind of adjustments to make. But then there's the question of implementing those adjustments, which is different.
So I would, I haven't watched the whole campaign, but I reckon the Pumas game by game adjusting their tactics for altitude, position, and what they see the team playing previously. They're pretty shrewd at that. And then, and they've got a great kick chase game. They've got runners who can get under the ball and get in the air and take it out in midair. And if you're happy to just drop bombs in there, deep in their territory, and then put runners onto it, that's hard to counterattack from. You're still deep in your own territory, and it's probably it's tactical gameplay that the All Blacks probably haven't encountered for a long, long time. Weren't expecting, and they made it, to your point, maybe had no response to it.
I was looking at it, similar aspect, but from a different point of view, and more in the, what do we do, generally speaking, is we imitate what's best, right?
Yeah.
You do that. You see that in business all the time. Somebody invents a widget.
Yeah.
And, they're the lone person with the widget for a little while. And then all these other widgets 2.0 come in. Well, I look at the All Blacks in that same sense, as they'd been the lead for so long, the innovators, as you so rightly labeled it. And when you're that person, when you're that object, that organization, and everybody sees the success, what do we want? We want success. Well, how do they have success? What's the model that they're using to create the success? Got it. So let me create my version of that model, implement it, as best we can. And I think you and I've had this conversation, actually all three of us, with USA Rugby, and trying to, why aren't we following some other models that have been successful rather than creating from scratch the American model? And that's a whole nother subject area. But when I look at the All Blacks, that's what I see. I see the team that's the product, the team that's been on top forever. I mean, look at, you could do the same thing in the NFL. That's why it's so hard for teams to repeat in the NFL to a Super Bowl, is because you win, and every single coach on the other 27 teams. 27 teams, right, Cam? 27 teams is watching your game film. From the end of the season till the first day of training camp. Heck, they're probably still watching it, that game film, and they're like, all right, how'd they do this? What call? What adjustment? So what you have to realize when you're that team, you have to make leaps, whether it's the sigmoid curve analysis, or just look at things in a completely different way. And how do you shift that? And what I want to throw to you, Angus, is how do you take that team, and we can use the San Diego team that you're working with. How do you take them and refoster that? Because they're all coming into you going, hey, coach, man, we've been doing it this way all along. We won, we had a pretty good season last year. Why do we need to do that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's actually really hard, because just skirt around a couple of subjects there, including the USA thing, is if everyone's doing everything the same way, nothing's going to get better, right? If everyone's thinking the same thing, then someone's not thinking. So I just talk to my players and go, I see so much physical attrition from banged up bodies in rugby. And I'm just looking at it going, why are you so banged up? And then I look at how they play and I go, oh, there we go. Right. Just the fundamentals, right? Self-defense, right? If you're going into contact, how do you look after your own body? How do you work with momentum, right? Versus just the made for TV T-bone shot, because it might look good once or twice, but eventually that's just going to take its toll. Working with space. I always say to players, if you can sustain this and win from it continuously, then have at it, right? If you're welcome to, I can show you alternatives. So right now with their teams, I can show you alternatives in terms of good use of space, good use of skills, good use of resource to actually make you more efficient and have better outcomes, both whether it's personal, unit, or team outcomes. But fundamentally, you've got to choose whether you employ it. Equally, what you've got in the player base that I've met is executive functioning issues. So coaching, no one's allowing these people to make their own decisions or fail forward, right? You see this in coaching all the time, right? Players they're like shaking in their shoes because everything's expected to be at a performance metric of 90+%. And I go, why? Oh, Joe missed a tackle. Yeah, well, we're at 60 minutes and he's made 15 tackles today and been in multiple rucks and run several 40 to 50 meter sprints. He's probably a bit tired. Yeah, so what? He missed a tackle. Let's work out how to work around that, you know? So I think overly critical environments created by under-curious coaching leads to a situation where players are not even emotionally equipped to explore, even if they want to, because there isn't the psychological safety for them.
And that's, that carries over into every business I've worked with too. I mean, this fear of failure, and there's so many little aspects of the match too that reminds me of my day and my style of coaching. That's what the week of training is for. In the game, I can't. I got 10 minutes in an 90-minute match, right? I've got 10 minutes to make adjustments and talk to them and do that. Otherwise, the players have to make the adjustments. And that's the same thing. I told you we talk about business. It's the same thing in your business, right? If you're not setting the parameters for your team to lead, for the individuals in your department, the individuals in your organization to take charge and be responsible and take risks within reason, make a decision, allow them, and then go back and learn from it. Whether it's, the Monday afternoon film or, all right, let's lay this out and see why, that widget that we're pushing out at the end of the factory line, we're a spec off. So maybe we need to go back and adjust. But this fear of failure, the aspect of you're not allowed to try something new, that's when you get passed up.
Yeah,
and there's an indicator right there. If you don't have a culture that allows innovation from the ground up, whether it's the 31st player on the selected squad or the new guy on the team that you just hired that sees something, if you're not allowing that, then you're getting stagnant in your ways and becoming that organization that will be passed.
Yeah. If my heart rate doesn't spike because of a player action in the game, then we've got something going wrong with the coaching.
I think
they got you on a heart monitor on the sideline.
I've got one on my wrist. I look at it every now and again. I go, oh, holy cow, fellas. Right. I had 3 spikes in that game, and not for good reasons.
You started off this question, Dad, with, talking about the desire to copy, that you see somebody who's successful and you want to copy it. And I think whether you're a business or a rugby team, when you're doing that, I think that the reason we don't see success when people try to copy is because, one, somebody else is already innovating past that. But then the other aspect is you're when you're copying something, you're trying to take something else and make it fit to your organization rather than figuring out the way to innovate inside of your organization. Talking international rugby, it's a little bit more homogenous, from country to country as far as, the talents and the skills. It's more homogenous than it would be, I'd say, with me at the college level. But I think the really interesting thing is you'll see teams do that to where they'll make an adjustment and say, okay, I'll co-sign this statement from our head coach, Sean Duffy, about this. We're talking about USA Sevens, and he was talking about one of the biggest problems is that they saw the success that South Africa had, and then they were making a lot of adjustments to that style of rugby, but then our personnel didn't really fit that style of rugby. I mean, we love Cody Melfi up from Colorado, but watching him try to run over a bunch of 6'6" Fijians, that's not really what we should probably be doing. That's not quite what the personnel is right there. And so when you take someone else's solution and try to fit it into your business, you're going to get something that's not quite, the solution that you're looking for. It makes me think of, there's a great Freakonomics episode that's something along the lines, the title is, America isn't like all these other countries, so stop trying to treat it like all those other countries. They're talking about healthcare and all these different things where you see these solutions and you say, oh, let's just do that here. And instead of recognizing, and this is the whole, ethos of that episode, is recognize how different we are, take the lessons from those other countries, take the lessons from those other rugby teams that have success, but then recognize how different you are and apply those to your organization rather than trying to make your organization fit something that it's not.
I'll just jump on that in the sense of I talk with clients about this all the time, particularly guys, active duty guys that are getting out that I'm coaching, and tell them that, I can't give you a checklist. There's no checklist that's going to work for everybody. But what I can do is I can show you the tools and processes and things and systems and ideas and concepts that have worked for other people. But you have to take what's parts and pieces of those systems and apply it to your situation in your life. Because some guys really, they don't need a job. Some guys got to make a lot of money. Some guys, are just going to ride it out and they don't care. There's so many different varieties, and I think that's a big piece of it. And bringing it back around to rugby, if we're innovating, how do we innovate on a larger scale for a larger regional improvement? The Puma's a great example, right? You don't just focus on top level in order to be successful, right? It comes from the ground swelling, it is the very basics, the foundations. So how do you implement something of that nature across such a, the U.S. is a really hard example because of how large of a nation it is, how diverse. But even pick on England, pick on your home nation, and how do they continue to foster that innovation with good old Eddie Jones throwing temper tantrums every other week?
So that's a really good question, actually, because the myth that everyone overseas plays rugby all the time is the first inhibitor in US rugby, I think, because they don't. So England rugby in England has to compete with soccer and cricket, right, in terms of volume, right, and revenue earned for athletes. Ireland, ironically, is competing with Gaelic football, which is a massive draw. Argentina, soccer again. So you kind of got to have a hearts and minds campaign, regionalize your resources. So I would say one of the flaws in the US, because of this desired democratic overlay, everyone's got to be involved all the time, which means all you're doing is spreading what resource you have very, very thin. So instead of strategically going, okay, how do we make centers of rugby excellence around the nation that we can support, and then create kind of a tracking system or a funneling system into those areas? So you look at England, England's got multiple entries into the England setup. So there isn't any pretty much in the US. There's like one, I think. And I'm not going to mention their name, but there's like one, maybe two, right? So for all the little Johnnies and little Susies who want to play, right, unless you know that one person or his mates, you're never getting in the national setup, which is, I get really angry about that, because it's you're denying young people the opportunity to represent their country. And it's so, England used to be like that, like in the 80s. And it's I actually get really incensed. I'm struggling to put a sentence together, because there's so, when you look at the loss of talent here in the rugby world, 80% of it going away between high school and college. That's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Right. It's and so we're not seeing the best talent. We're not seeing all of it. So the solution, in my mind, regionalize, declare regional locations where people, you're going to look at New Zealand, right? We've got all these regions, we've got loads of community, county, and municipal rugby. But if you want to grow up and become an All Black, this is what we've got in Christchurch. This is what we've got in Wellington. This is what we've got in Auckland. This is what we've got Dunedin, or where the Highland, and that's where you divert. So you've got the choices. And also, don't stop people just because they're on the South Island. They can travel to North Island if that's where they think their advantage is going to be. Don't stop them doing that. Don't sequester them and isolate them. Declare your options and sustain it. You've got a 9-year run to the World Club, right? And how does someone who's 15, 14, 15, 16, 17 today know how to get in the system?
Yeah.
Good question, my friend. No, and it just makes me mad, because sport should be accessible, not inaccessible. And you look at Argentina competing with soccer. Not everywhere in Argentina has rugby, right? It spirals out from Buenos Aires is the hotbed. It goes out around the region there, and there's another hotspot, I think, in Mendoza, and out around the regions there. And I think that's about it, right? And then they export their talent to Spain and to France, right? And once they've had that time, they bring them back in and they build them up through the Sevens program. So the Sevens program is aligned with and overlaps with the 15s program. Now that requires collaboration and cooperation as well as competition.
Unity of effort. There we go. Principle of warfare, unity of effort.
Right. And just to accept that you don't own all the assets all the time, do you? You've got to give people room. It's fluid dynamics, allow people to evolve and flow at their frequency. Yeah.
It makes me think of, a little bit of a, Book of Five Rings, not being married to one school of thought, right? And I think that far too often in the conversation around American rugby, it's like we need one solution that's just going to fix everything. And instead of looking at it like, hey, maybe we'll get some athletes and the USA team from, just to throw out just different organizations, the American Raptors with the crossover athletes. Hey, maybe we'll get 1 or 2 guys from there. That's good. We need 1 or 2 guys from there. Then we need to still work on the high school pipeline, because we'll get, 5 or 6 guys from there. And then you look at all these different areas, and it's kind of like when you talk in a business of marginal solutions, and you're like, let me make that 2% change in these 5 different areas and then see how it adds up. Because when you get locked in on one solution, then you're missing out on all the opportunity of all of those different areas. And so I think you've got to look at it as, it's a complicated problem. And instead of picturing it as this, the pipeline, like we always say, and it's, you go A, B, C, D, screw that. It is a array of all of these different paths that people can take. And we need to approach it as such. Right.
If you went in the pie shop and you could only buy 1 or 2 pies, after you've been 2 visits, you wouldn't go back, would you? You want a whole lot of pies, right? To keep you going.
All right. Bonus point for you, Camden. What book is that?
Oh, shoot. No, I don't know. Which one? Do you know off the top of your head?
I'm pretty sure it's the Book of Fire.
Book of Fire. Well, there we go.
The fourth one of the 5 books of the 5 rings. So those of you who don't know out there, pick up the book. And by the way, Miyamoto Musashi died a long time ago. So if any of his family is getting royalty for this book and they want to throw it back to the Cam Otis Show, you go ahead. But I highly recommend. Tell you the truth, I don't remember if I told you this, Angus, but I'm pretty sure I told Camden. I bought that book and gave it to the head coach of the Raptors. Well, I went up and gave a team talk a few years ago when the professional team was still here, and I said, "This is the book to success on the rugby pitch. If you read that book and you truly digest and understand the principles of what Miyamoto Musashi says in that book, and you adopt and apply, as he says, study this often at the end of almost every sentence, it felt like. But if you do, that's how you beat the All Blacks. That's how you beat any team in your competition. When you read that book and you truly understand the tactics and the strategy that he talks about, and there's a whole nother show we'll have to put on the bulletin board to save for later, Camden. But is the Book of Five Rings, because man, yeah, highly recommend it. And I'm gonna say what I learned, and I won't cheat and say the Book of Five Rings, because yes, I always love talking about Mr. Pick pushing me onto that book about 20 years ago, and I appreciate Mr. Pick doing that. So shout out to Mr. Pick too. But it is for me. Well, I had it a second ago. Oh, there it is. If everyone is thinking the same way, no one is thinking. I love that statement. There's the simplicity in that philosophy of it. If we're all thinking the same thing, then no one's really thinking, right? We're all a bunch of yes men, and nobody's innovating. You can't innovate that way. Camden, how about you? What'd you learn?
So you took mine, but then you also handed me off another one just a second ago, which is the Book of Fire, is the specific book where Miyamoto Musashi talks about being flexible in that. And just to kind of build on what you said there, I think it's such an interesting thing, because the flexibility there, when you talk about the game of rugby, what did we talk about earlier with the All Blacks and the Pumas in Australia? It's, strategy and being rigid with your strategy rather than being flexible, making those adjustments goes through on the personal level, the unit level, every single different thing. And it goes exactly the same in the business, that you have to be flexible. As soon as you commit to one thing, you're setting yourself up for failure, because when you only have one thing that you're good at or one thing you're committing to, it's really easy for the opposition to figure out how to defeat that.
Well, let me see if I can get this out there, just because we're throwing things. I think it was Epictetus who said that a ship should not rest on a single anchor, nor should a life rest on a single hope. There's my segue to our Royal Navy representative, because I used the word ship. Angus, what'd you learn?
I learned or reflected on a couple of things, but I think growth, if you're going to grow your garden, you've got to look after it. Yeah. And there's just too many people in a hurry to be top Johnny Banana. There's no nurturing in that. You're only chopping things down. Yeah. No, that's so true. We all want to put it in the microwave, right? Deep, deep, deep. Start. Now I don't have a microwave, by the way. There's no microwave in my kitchen. Hasn't been one in my kitchen for most of a decade.
There you go. Wow. Microwave.
Does that make you more patient?
Makes me less inclined to eat food that I shouldn't eat.
There's the real reason. That's the real reason. Yes. Angus, man, how do people follow you, find you, learn more about your coaching style and philosophy?
Yeah, so I am on LinkedIn, Coach Angus or Angus Peacock. You can find me there, and you can reach out as well just through the messaging. I see that most days. And then I've got my own company called Black Dragon Enterprises, which is all about coaching individuals or units, creating a state of flow in your own life. So you can actually, I've got a blog actually. So I've just finally created a blog which has got a video, audio, and written element to it. So you can go and look at some of the things, essays I've written, or just some visual footage of things I've done in the past, or where I've been involved on the coaching and the coach education front. So that's www.blackdragonenterprises.com. And you can get me through there. Or LinkedIn, really. I'm quite easy to get hold of, just like a unicorn. So,
you
know.
Awesome, Angus. Hey, man, always great to have you on the show. And thanks for diving into philosophy of rugby with us today.
No, and I want another one because I want to follow up to this because we didn't even get into the Eagles or the World Cup.
You're right.
We need to get.
That's one I think we all three have to sit down and have a beer while we're talking about it.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. That's got to come with a cocktail.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks again. Camden, run us.
Pleasure.
All right. Thank you all for listening to the Cam Otis Show. And a special thanks to our guest, Angus Peacock, for joining us today. And of course, our sponsor, Tribe and Purpose. Find your tribe, find your purpose. Get started for free today at findyourpurpose.coach. Make sure to follow the Cam Otis Show on Instagram and Facebook. And please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening. Videos of the podcast are on our YouTube page. And you can always get a full archive of our episodes at camandotisshow.buzzsprout.com. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next time.